Hi everyone, Paul here from FamilyWheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And it really does seem that people who like this channel also seem to really like Subarus, because a few weeks ago on the program, after many requests to review the Forester, I posted it and immediately people were saying, okay, now let's look at the Outback as well. So we've done just that this week, thanks to the folks at Subaru Calgary who got us set up in this 2017 Premier Edition of the Outback as well, which is new for 2017. We're going to get to what's new, but let's first look back on this vehicle. It's been in the company's line, hard to believe, for over 20 years at this point. Back in 1994 it was released, and of course we had Paul Hogan, Crocodile Dundee, driving around and showing us how capable this car could be. It's my best Australian accent, by the way. Of course, back then it was just a fairly small station wagon with a bit of extra ground clearance and some good all-wheel drive systems on board. Well, now we're 5 generations deep on this car. It's really grown up, gotten a lot bigger over that time, and it's sort of somewhere in the middle now between a station wagon and an SUV, but still with kind of station wagon-like styling. I asked Subaru Canada what the target demographic for this vehicle is, and they said traditionally it's kind of empty nesters, perhaps slightly older buyers, but that's trending toward younger people with young families at this point as well. So the big question for me this week is, how is this going to stack up compared to that Forester that we were looking at? Because that traditionally has been the younger family's choice when it comes to the Subaru line. So we're going to pile a bunch into this vehicle. We're going to see how that Forester and this Outback stack up, as well as comparing it to that Volkswagen Alltrack that we were reviewing a couple of weeks ago, new for 2017, that's meant to compete directly with the Subaru line. So let's take this thing for a spin and see what's new for 2017 as well. That's all this week here on Family Wheels. You know, it's funny, last week on the program, of course, I was driving around that Ford Fusion Hybrid for you as our tester, and we got this sudden fall snowstorm that hit the city, and I was kind of nervous to drive it around because it had front-wheel drive, all-season tires. I definitely didn't want to crash the thing. This week, all the snow's gone just in time for me to be in a Subaru, and it's a shame because I love driving these cars in the snow. I had an Outback in the mid-2000s, and when you put a good set of winter tires on, it was an absolute beast. These cars are incredible in snowy, icy conditions, and that's largely thanks to that full-time all-wheel drive system that Subaru is famous for. The standard kit on this base car is looking really good these days. For under $28,000, you're getting that all-wheel drive, you're getting a rear backup camera, a 6.2-inch infotainment system with a touchscreen, Bluetooth connectivity, you're getting roof rails included as well, which means that you can put on a bike rack or a ski box really easily. A lot of people who buy this kind of car are going to want to do just that. Move on up from that base price, and there are a bunch of different trims that you can look at and consider in the Outback. 11 of them now in total, in fact, because we now have the addition of this Premier trim, which I'm in here this week. This is definitely the most high-end interior that I've ever seen in any Subaru vehicle, and the brand in general has done a really good job over the last few years of making its interiors just feel a little bit more high-end and competitive with what else is out there on the market these days. That said, a lot of the switchware here on the steering wheel feels a little bit cheap and clunky, and I also don't love this climate control panel that we have right here in the center console. It'd be nice if that was just incorporated directly into the infotainment system screen to clean up the interior a little bit more, and we could do away with these more old school style digital readouts that really make the cabin feel a little bit more dated than it should be. Meanwhile, if you really want to strike up a debate among your friends, ask them about the exterior styling on the Outback, because I have heard it all this week. People are going to have different takes on this car. I don't mind it. I think that it's got a great utilitarian look. The result is that you've got really excellent headroom in here. It's got a taller roof line, so it's even better in terms of headroom than that Forester that we were driving around. And of course, lots of ground clearance as well, so you are going to be able to blaze a trail down into some British Columbia back roads for your adventures. However, it has exactly the same amount of ground clearance as the Forester, despite the fact that it does seem to have a slightly taller looking stance. That's more sort of just a trick of the eye. Now, speaking of that Forester, the more basic trims on the Outback share the same 2.5 liter boxer engine that you're going to find on the more basic Foresters as well. This engine's been a real mainstay for Subaru over the years, and it's remarkably efficient as well. Subaru is saying that you should see between 7.3 to 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers as your average out of that engine in this car. Considering the size of the Outback, that's pretty amazing. Then when we look at the higher level trims on the Outback, we're getting into the 3.6R engine, which is what we've got here this week. And while the delivery of power is smooth and steady, I don't find it quite as fun and exhilarating as that 2-liter turbocharged engine that we had in the Forester a couple of weeks ago. Subaru is saying you should see between 8.7 to 12 liters per 100 kilometers. I'm averaging about 11.5 liters per 100 kilometers this week on a mix of highway and city roads. And if it were me, I'd probably go for that smaller engine to get better fuel efficiency out of this car, especially considering the fact that you're not getting any better towing capacity out of the Outback with the 3.6R on board. You're still only able to tow 2,700 pounds even with this larger engine, which certainly doesn't make it a great option if you're looking for this as a tow vehicle. Even that Ford Escape that we were driving around a couple of weeks ago had far better towing capacity than this vehicle, even though it is so much bigger. Now, I'm not a big fan of continuously variable transmissions. Yes, they're more efficient and they can be easier to maintain, but they also often really suck the power out of an engine. Now, you can still get the 2.5 liter boxer engine in the Outback with a traditional 6-speed standard transmission, but the 3.6R only comes available with a CVT. Now, I'm finding that off the line in this car, even though it's got a pretty healthy dose of horsepower, 256 of them, that it just kind of takes a little while to get up and going. And I don't know if that's because of the CVT or just because of the way this engine's been tuned. That said, once you get this up to speed, this CVT is very much like an automatic transmission, and we still have paddle shifters here on the steering wheel, so we can shift down and play around in the corners. And it's a good thing too, because this car has been really nicely tuned in terms of its suspension. Subaru's found a nice middle ground between not being so rough on bumpy, rougher roads, but still not being really kind of lumbery through the corners as a result. So nicely tuned suspension here from Subaru. And a large part of that is because of that boxer engine that's designed to be lower slung in the engine bay, gives you a lower center of gravity, and you feel it in the corners. Now, speaking of ride comfort, another big part of that is just how quiet of a ride it is. So we pulled out our decibel reader and averaged 68 decibels at 100 kilometers an hour, which isn't going to be quite as good as the Forester that we saw last time we were testing a Subaru, but still nothing to sneeze at, especially when you consider the fact that this is a larger vehicle that is jacked up off the ground with a slightly higher roof height as well. So horsepower and paddle shifters and cornering aside, chances are you're not going to be goofing off in this car that much, because ultimately it is more of a family-oriented vehicle. So Subaru's done a lot over the years to really improve its safety technology. It means that anytime now that you're going to get an Outback with the technology package, that it's going to have things like lane keeping assist and adaptive cruise control and forward collision mitigation braking. So if you are about to run into somebody, you're not reacting to it, the car is going to take over for you. And new for 2017 in the higher level Outbacks, we also have reverse auto braking. So same idea, just as you're backing out of a parking spot and say you don't see a pedestrian or another car, the car will brake on your behalf. Also on the higher level trims for 2017, we have auto high beams, which is a nice safe feature to have when you're cruising along the highway as well. Now, a lot of these safety systems are being run through Subaru's Eyesight program, which is directly above me here at the rear view mirror. The whole idea is that rather than using just one camera to keep an eye and scan the road in front of you, Subaru uses two. So you actually get a stereo image being sent to all of these computers. It means the depth perception is better, and it means that it's not nearly as jerky as many of the other systems that are out there. It's all of these behind the scenes systems, and the fact that Subaru's put a lot of thought into how this vehicle will react once it actually does get into an accident, that's given the Outback a top Safety Pick Plus rating, which is great news for families. All right, let's do our walk around now on the Outback, because there are a bunch of things that are great for families in this car. First things first, though, there are some features that I was expecting to see this Premier Edition of the Outback, new for 2017, that we're just not getting here. First up, look at the size of the sunroof. It's pretty small, while a lot of the competitors at this price point, around 42 grand, have come out with much larger moonroofs than we see here, sort of the panorama style. Next up is the heated seats in both the front and second row. That's great. But we don't have ventilated seats, something that we'd see in a lot of competition at this price as well. And that's despite the fact that the seating in both the first and second row does have these ventilation perforations, which we've talked about before. These are really tough to keep clean for families, so make sure to throw something down on the seat behind you if you've got kids throwing stuff around in the back seats still. Now here we are in the second row, and this is where this car really starts to stand up from the competition. I was testing at Volkswagen Alltrack last month. It's meant to compete directly with the Outback. It's new for 2017, but it was squeezed in the second row, whereas here, tons of headroom, lots of legroom as well, even though I've adjusted my front seat for a tall driver. I've got lots of nice soft touch surfaces here in this Premier Edition as well. Just a really nice place to be. Now, speaking of great for families, and this is another thing that really makes the Outback stand out, it's got 1,005 liters of trunk space when that second row is up. Check it out. I mean, this is our standardized trunk test here, and it's been gobbled up by the Outback. A diaper bag, a backpack, a stroller, a soccer ball, and a couple of bags of groceries, and we've still got tons of room for the family dog or whatever it is that you're after. Now, here's something that I was disappointed not to see, which is this pass-through here in the middle seat in the second row. We have that in our Volvo. It means that you can throw a pair of skis in here and still have room for 4 passengers. Since this is such an outdoor-minded vehicle, I was expecting to see that. Surprised that we don't have that in the Outback. Here's something they've changed for 2017 for the better, and that's that the rear tailgate, which closes automatically on the higher level trims, is now a little bit faster. That was a complaint of mine with the Forester, was that it was a very slow-moving tailgate, which would be a pain over time. Now, we do have a rear-facing car seat in place here, and this is the big test that impressed me here in the Outback, because we have over a foot of leg room, even though we've got a rear-facing child seat in place. That is like 7-passenger SUV territory, and it means that I could go on a great big road trip with this thing with a couple of rear-facing kids in the second row, total non-issue. Speaking of second row car seats, Subaru has redesigned their latching system for 2017 to make it a little bit easier to take car seats in and out. Sometimes that can be a real pain in vehicles because you've got to hunt down way beneath the seats for those latches. They've got this little flap system for 2017, which is going to be way easier for you, and that was a beef for people before. They've taken care of it for 2017. So if you're looking for more off-road minded, more burly station wagons to compete with the likes of the Subaru, you have to pretty much look across the pond to the likes of the Volkswagen Alltrack, the Audi Allroad, and of course there's that Volvo V90 with a bit of an off-road package that's been released for 2017. Looks awesome, by the way. And I think that those European companies have done a better job in terms of interior refinement in their vehicles. However, when it comes to bang for your buck, you can't beat the Outback. I mean, it's Japanese made still, its quality is excellent, and you're getting Subaru's amazing all-wheel drive system, which I think is the best in the world, at a fraction of the price. So if it were me, I'd take the Outback for a drive first, see what you think of it, and if you're not missing those higher end finishes, then you're going to save a lot of money and put that right back in your jeans. But the big question that I had this week was, which would win out, the Forester that we were in a few weeks ago from Subaru Calgary or this Outback? And I think ultimately, while that Forester was a bit more fun to drive around with that 2-liter turbocharged engine, I would still go with the Outback. It's got better second row comfort, it's got more in terms of cargo capacity, I've got lots of headroom as a tall guy like myself, but I'd like to know what your thoughts are. How does this stack up to the Forester? How does it stack up to its European equivalents? You can leave a comment below. Please subscribe while you're at it, and then check familywheels.ca for our full report card on this vehicle as well. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week, and thanks again to Subaru Calgary for setting us up in this car this week. We'll see you next time.